What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster here on this Wednesday, May 11th, 2022 date, about 6:30 p.m. California time. Out here along the West Coast, no doubt, latest earthquake shows a 1.9 earthquake into the area of the Northern California region. Looks like right around the Cobb Mountain area. Hydrothermal operations taking place there in the Northern California area. Let's go ahead and check out the latest map here from the USGS showing the last 24 hours of earthquake activity. This is a 2.5 earthquake map and above. Of course, 4.0 international. Quite the uptick here, as kind of as expected, along the western part of the Pacific Ring of Fire into the Philippine Plate once again, where we're seeing a pretty good swarm of activity here inland. A lot of these earthquakes here really deep. Check out that 4.4, almost 600 kilometer deep earthquake. Since then, we've seen some further deep movement earthquakes here around the region, mostly in the 4 range, but still rather deep. All this earthquake activity following that swarm of movement here along the Philippine Trench over the last week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, a little bit further up north. So getting a lot of pressure gradients transferring down here to the south. A little concerned about the Java Trench area. We have not seen any significant deep movement or a significant surface rupture, I should say, in quite some time. This area, of course, is very prominent to producing some mega quakes above the 8.0 threshold. So with all the movement going around and the pressure gradients here in the area, and the plate dynamics, this is the area to watch pretty closely for some subsequent large-scale movement. Today, here in the Java Trench, we're looking at some further deep activity. All 3 of these earthquakes deep into the Java Trench. The deepest one was this 4.4, the latest quake at 282 kilometers. Got to remember, deep earthquake activity does trend upward, upstream, and creates more pressure here along the locked areas, producing those greater earthquakes in the 8 range. Let's see what else we got here. Down around the Solomon Islands area, Vanuatu area, seen some movement, and the Fiji Islands area as well. The majority of this earthquake, though, earlier this morning and earlier this afternoon time frame. We haven't seen any subsequent movement within the last few hours or so along this area. Last quake was a 5.1 in the Kermadec Islands region. About a while ago, 8-9 hours ago. So kind of watching this area pretty closely. By the way, I was just chatting with someone down in the Melbourne area of Australia on the CB radio, lower sideband 38. Pretty crazy skip conditions going on out there. Favorable because of all the solar sunspot activity happening on the sun, but pretty crazy to chat thousands of miles away on the CB radio. South America, aside from some surface feature earthquake activity here, we do have one 4.5 here. This one was earlier this afternoon. Actually, both of these earlier today, 4.5 and a 5.0. But this one here, 131 kilometers deep into the area of the Peruchilli Trench. No subsequent aftershock activity following the large earthquake last, or at least yesterday, but still watching this area pretty closely. Remember, again, deep movement, that deep earthquake activity that we seen yesterday still tends to draw the pressure, and the X marks the spot upstream. Watching that pretty closely in that Peruchilli Trench area. Puerto Rico, seen this is all old activity though. Let's bring up the all magnitudes here. And looks like a couple 2s within the last couple hours or so. Aside from that, the majority of this around Puerto Rico, very old movement earlier this morning. Through the Middle America Trench, seen a little layoff of activity. Nothing significant to report for now. This activity from earlier this morning, 3.8 and a 4.4. Into the Mexico region. This earthquake here, 103 kilometers deep into the Middle America Trench. Let's go ahead and check out the states. Still seen one earthquake here. This one, again, from earlier this morning. No subsequent large-scale, or at least any type of recent movement going on here in the North Carolina region. Notice the swarm has died down in South Carolina. Over the last 7 days, we'll go ahead and bring up that map, and we can go back months past. This area has seen a little bit of swarming activity kicking up there along the fault systems. I did cover that a little bit a couple months back in January. Kind of looked at that a little bit further in detail. So check that out on the channel if you're kind of curious to see what's going on out there in the South Carolina region. Oklahoma, a little quarry blast out there around Tulsa, north of Tulsa. 1.4. And just very minimal movement here in the West Texas area out there around Pecos, Texas. 3.1 and a 2.5. So Yellowstone, let's go ahead and jump into Yellowstone here. I know we did have some pretty large earthquake, right? Well, 4.2, kind of about the largest we've seen around Yellowstone in quite some time, right? It's been quite a while since we've seen a 4.2 up there. So let's go ahead and key in to the Yellowstone region real quick. I'm going to see if this map is going to work. Most of the time it does. It's called isthisthingon.org. It's a Yellowstone thumbnails, and they are currently offline. I've been trying them for the past 30 minutes, and they are not accessible. I get an error on their page, so I don't know if they've shut down, they haven't paid their bills, or maybe someone's crashing the website. So in that case, look at that. We're going to go to the, well, we can cover this real quick. We'll cover this activity. This is a Yellowstone overview, an article put out by the University of Utah back in 2015. Talks about the larger than expected magma chamber way down below. This here is northeast area, and a lot of people kind of pointing that 4.2 towards the northeast, and that could be a possibility. I do want to bring up here, I'm trying to find it, hold on one second here. It's the seismograph stations there from the University of Utah. So stand by for a second. Here we go while I bring this up. Space weather we'll check out here in a minute. It's pretty active, by the way. Okay, so this is the University of Utah. This is the stations that the Yellowstone page normally utilizes, but they are down. So we're going to check out the activity in the raw data ourselves. And we're going to check out the eastern part here of Yellowstone National Park. Kind of out here around the area where this 4.2 struck, and see what we got going on. There's the 4.2. I like this because this is very close to the epicenter of this earthquake. Notice the very small spikes there, indicative of aftershocks following this 4.2. Since then, there's been definitely a handful following that 4.2 earthquake, and a little moderate one there as well. Over the last few hours, nothing, though, has been reported. Maybe a very small earthquake. But aside from that, the majority of the aftershock sequences following that earthquake probably consisted about a couple hours following that 4.2. Hopefully you guys can see that. I forgot sometimes that, let me go back here real quick and double check, see if you guys can see that or not. I'm going to open this up in a new window. A lot of times, there we go. There we go. All right. Sometimes the thumbnail will pop up and you guys won't see it, unfortunately. I got to remember that here with the Utah Education website. So here it is again, the 4.2. There's the aftershock sequences there, just in case I'm repeating myself. Good handful of earthquakes there. Not as big as the 4.2, but definitely more than 10 or 15 earthquakes in that sequence of aftershocks. There's a little bit larger one as well. But since then, the last 5 hours or so, 6 hours, nothing going on. So a lot of people asking if this is Yellowstone related. Well, obviously it's Yellowstone related, right? Is it tectonic? Is it fault system related? Or is it magma related? We got to look at these earthquakes here. Look at the depths of these earthquakes. The 4.2 struck at 14 kilometers. That's way down there. So there's no surface quaking going on here. This is definitely way down there. And if we look here, this is kind of an overview of the Yellowstone National Park, if you will. Northeast direction, kind of where we're seeing here in the Yellowstone Park. You got the caldera in this area. It's not outlined, but you can kind of see it here. These fault systems here kind of give the outline of the caldera before you get to these mountains. So I'm going to circle this here with the mouse. You can see that this activity struck outside of the caldera region by about 10 miles or so to the northeast. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Towards the northeast, we got these hydrothermal fluids. What are hydrothermal fluids? They are heated water, natural heated water. And of course, you got the magma chamber over here, the magma reservoir, the Yellowstone hot spot plume. Let's go ahead and spit that out. That was kind of almost a little funny right there. So there's a lot taking place right here. And the earthquake activity in question is down there at about 14 kilometers. So we're looking at between 10, 20, roughly about here. 14 kilometers. So it's really hard to say if this is indeed any type of magma-related activity. It's somewhat of a large earthquake for this area. But I'm not 100% convinced it's magma related, and I'm actually not 100% convinced that it's fault related due to the depth. So we're going to monitor that and keep a close eye on it. If we see further movement, then no doubt, it's something to look into. Obviously, there's a little. Let's go ahead and bring this up here. Let's go ahead and bring up the. Where'd it go? Is this it? GPS monitoring stations across the map. That's not the right one. Let's see if I can bring this up here. Here we go. Okay, this is GPS station. So we kind of like to monitor activity, of course, around volcanoes, right? The super volcano. That's something we all should be monitoring because that could have a major outcome here, no doubt, in our future. So. Looking over here, unfortunately, they don't have a specific GPS station here in this area where the earthquake struck. So I'm going to go just a little bit north here and monitor this activity. Remember, this is just north of the area where that 4.2 struck. And looking back, unfortunately, this does not go to recent times. But looking back to about 2016 or so, 2020, definitely seen an uptick in vertical movement. Let me see if I can find a little bit more recent time frame here. Kind of looking at this closely. We'll check out this one down here. And these guys are pretty much showing a pretty steady across the board with no vertical displacement at all. Of course, this is a 100 millimeter lift. And it's not showing much. Let me see here what else we got outside of the area. We check those two. We'll check here just north of Yellowstone Lake. Now check out this activity from about 2000. Remember the uplift? We've seen a pretty good uptick in movement. I remember this is kind of when I started getting into Yellowstone specifically. The major swarm back in 2008, I think it was 2007. Seen a significant Yellowstone swarm kicking up and caused all sorts of panic and fear-mongering. In fact, I think the FBI even paid someone a visit due to the massive fear-mongering that someone produced there on YouTube because of Yellowstone. Had a lot of folks freaking out over the earthquake swarm and uplift. But right now, look at the 2022 time frame. We're seeing a downtrend, obviously a vertical displacement downward. Over the last, it's been happening since about 2016 here in this area of the park, and a noticeable downtrend in 2022 with a kind of purple pink, what is it, kind of pink little dots there indicating that further down trend of that displacement there. So this was pointing upwards and we were seeing this, it seemed like a significant swarm. I'd be looking into it, but I don't think this is anything to worry about in terms of panic. Okay, a lot of people take data like this, 4.2, and they think, oh my gosh, Yellowstone's gonna blow. It's a 4.2. Oh my gosh, let's get out of here. Right? That's not what this channel is all about. We're all about the raw data, the facts, and presenting them to you. Now you got to remember here, it's pretty deep. It's a pretty deep earthquake. Fault systems around here, There is fault systems here. We got, looks like the Mirror Plateau Fault. It's a younger section here. But then again, got to remember this earthquake here is pretty deep, 13, 14 kilometers down there. So I'm going to be watching this pretty closely and seeing how this plays out. But I don't think it's anything to worry about at the moment. If I did, I'm a very transparent person, and I myself would be pointing that out. But for now, earthquake activity looks to be in Yellowstone National Park fault related, but deep. Definitely deep related. No GPS unusual activity around Yellowstone National Park, and we can check out all of the GPS stations there, and they show the same trend, downward, downtrend. If we were looking at magma intrusion, uplift of the ground, obviously GPS stations would show that. This is the raw data, folks. Anyone and everyone can check this out. All right, guys, I don't want to spend too much time on that because I know a lot of people are wondering what's going on at Yellowstone. But if we go back over the last 50, 60 years, there's been much larger earthquakes, 6s and 7s around the area, and Yellowstone never blew. A lot of faults up here, a lot of plate dynamics in this area. All right, Southern California, what do we got going on here? A little earthquake activity around the Ocatello Wells region. Looks like a 1.6, pretty deep, 9.5 kilometers. Then again, Southern California definitely looking at some deep movement throughout the last couple months. Low activity out here in the Santa Rosa Mountains, a little swarm of activity, including 0.6. No major movement. If we look at the 2.5 and above, there's only that 2.6 in that area. Again, deep, 14 kilometers deep. So that's one thing I've noticed, the major trend in deep activity striking up here in this area. What else we got? No major swarming along the Garlock Fault structure tonight. Ridgecrest area looking pretty quiet, aside from some microquakes and a little activity up here around the Coso Range volcanic field. Northern California, one earthquake up here outside of Redding, it looks like. Millville, California, 1.2. Cascadia subduction zone, not showing a whole lot. I do want to point out, though, USGS not showing activity here in the Gulf of California. I did see an earthquake show up on the EMSC model. Go ahead and bring that up here real quick and see if we have that earthquake. A 4.3 struck in this area of the Gulf of California a little bit ago, earlier this afternoon, about 10 kilometers. It has been reviewed, it looks like, by the Mexican Seismological Survey area. But USGS not reporting that earthquake, and I'm surprised because it's above the 4.0 threshold. So, but there is still a little activity occurring down here in the Gulf of California. Up north, a little query blast into the Oregon area. Mount St. Helens, they're finally showing a couple more earthquakes out here. 2 of them, whoop-de-doo, right? Let's go ahead and check out the tremor map and the volcanic seismic activity tonight. Most of the activity, 96 epicenters here into the southern end, very southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. It's a pretty, not super large number, but it's pretty large for the southern end, very southern end, as I mentioned. Nothing up north. Let's go ahead and check out the volcanic activity here at Mount St. Helens, since USGS is reporting a little bit of activity on the map. Looks like, well, stand by for a second here. We always got a 5-second pause. So, well, that was pretty quick. All right, looking at the recent seismograph here, a couple earthquakes in the area. Good handful of them, actually, within the last hour or so. See these red spikes? Red spike here, blue spike. A couple smaller, very small microquakes there. Go ahead and check out this afternoon time frame. This is pretty quick now. I wonder if they got their servers updated. Over the last 24 hours, a little bit of microquake activity here. Notice the seismograph lines are smaller. Okay, so they're not showing these little microquakes as prominent on the map, or on the graph, I should say. But they're there. There's still quite a few microquakes throughout the region over the last 12, 24 hours or so. Into the Seattle area, a little activity it looks like, just outside of Seattle, 1.3, 26 kilometers, super deep earthquake outside of the Seattle fault system there. That one's going to produce a low 7, mid 7 one day. Alaska, low activity, a little spotty movement throughout the region. Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, quiet. Checked out that earthquake off the coast of Japan. And Mariana Trench, pretty quiet tonight. So, a couple of spots to watch, I think, folks, with all this large-scale deep movement is the trenches, the upstream areas, such as the Java Trench, and the areas around the Philippine Plate. That's still been a pretty active area. Not to mention the Kermadec Trench region. We've seen some deeper earthquake activity out there recently, including that 4 point, well, that's way up there in Fiji. But this one here in the Kermadec Trench, the last earthquake, 5.1 at 60 kilometers. So no subsequent large-scale surface rupture up here along the subduction zone, which we're still kind of watching. Big Island of Hawaii, not a whole lot. Some southeast movement going on there. Looks like Loihi Seamount, low activity off to the west. One earthquake up here around Mauna Loa with a 2.6 negative earthquake, indicating a very shallow surface earthquake up there. And a little spotty movement throughout the China region into the, where's this earthquake? Romania? 4.1, 142 kilometers deep into the mountain ranges out there. Atlantic Ocean, nothing going on through the South Sandwich Islands northward. Pretty quiet. All right, what else we got to check out here? Let's see. We already seen those. This is a pretty cool site to check out, though, folks, if you want to look at raw data. I know I use the station called Yellowstone Seismograph Overview. It's called isthisthingon.org, but they're not working. So if you want the raw data, go to the University of Utah and check out the live seismograph stations here all across the area down into Utah as well. So, but it does cover Yellowstone, which is pretty appreciated, and I do check these out quite often. All right, Earthquakes Canada. We'll go ahead and check out the neighbors to the north, see what's going on out here. Check this out. Let's go ahead and check out the plate boundaries here. Some movement out there along the western section here of the Juan de Fuca plate. Couple red circles there, 3.2 and a 3.5, relatively shallow earthquakes, but some movement nonetheless taking place up here, back building along the western portion of the Cascadia subduction zone. Of course, the blue line here, that is the Cascadia. Over here, you got the Juan de Fuca plate, Explorer plate, and of course the Pacific plate over here further to the west. But kind of looking pretty pressurized there in that area. Purple circle indicating the most recent earthquake here around the BC area, Port Clements area. 2.9 at 5 kilometers below the surface there for that earthquake. The rest of Canada, not a whole lot going on over the last day or so. A lot of spotty movement up here outside of the Alaska region into the Yukon Territory. Some small microquakes going on. All right, let's get into the solar weather activity, where we're noticing quite the uptick in the solar flare movement. Check out this pretty good size M flare. This was a what was a M1 or M4 point? Let me check and see what this was. M2.6. Okay, but look at these charts here. Look at this. This is definitely, I think, a little bit larger. There's a pretty good CME that was produced. This was a long duration M flare, but I say it's stronger because this was facing away from Earth and away from these stations that monitor the activity. But it was drawn out pretty significantly there earlier this afternoon, and that was from the sunspot here, now way over there on the western limb. This one right here, out of view, pretty much out of view. Still seeing a little bit of the sunspot flaring, but that was the culprit of that long duration M flare earlier today. So the sun's pretty active right now. We're looking at a couple different regions rotating into view here along the eastern limb. Earth-facing sunspots do pose a threat for some flaring. Looks like these folks are predicting or at least forecasting probability 15% chance of an X flare, which I think is appropriate. 99% chance of a C flare, and M flare at 45% chance here from these sunspots, which are now kind of facing Earth. There's a shot of the M flare that kind of kicked off earlier. That is the Western Limb flare. It did produce an R1 level radio blackout, and this did produce a CME, but not Earth-directed. Current KP indexes are around the 2 level, with no sufficient auroras expected here tonight or the next couple nights. It looks like a little elevated movement activity around the May 14th region. Higher latitudes could see a 40% chance of the auroras. We do have a coronal hole stream that will be rotating into view. But I think the sunspot dynamics right now do pose the most hazard. Look at 3007 right there. We got quite a bit of intermixing going on here with the magnetic structure, the blue and the red mixing up here. So we're going to see how this plays out with the possible flaring here. Look at least a 15% chance of an X flare. It's very probable here in the coming day. Pretty massive though, right? Getting some growth going onto it. And of course behind the bend, further sunspot development here. We can see this. Let's go ahead and go back here to this one, stereo A, and we can see that further development here on the far side of the sun that will be rotating into Earth view in the coming days. So it'll be pretty cool, I think. Anyway, I kind of like the sunspot activity. Let's see. I want to show you guys real quick the QSL map here. I kind of talked about the communication system right now on the CB radio and also ham frequency operations. I was just chatting before I got on the stream here. Just chatting here from Northern California all the way down to Melbourne, Australia, on the CB radio, lower sideband 38, lower sideband 38 on the CB radio. This here is showing the 28 MHz frequency, and things are kind of cooking out there. Thanks to all the sunspot activity, creating some favorable skip conditions out there across the globe. And I was talking to Florida, North Carolina as well, on the CB radio. So it's kind of cool. Definitely pretty neat if you're into this type of stuff, which I am. It's been a while since I've been into CB radio, ham radio, but I do get on here once in a while when skip conditions are favorable, just so I can chat to the folks there in Australia. Kind of neat to hear, a little bit different lingo and that tone that they have down there coming off on the CB radio. Pretty cool. Thousands of miles away. All right, folks. Have a good night. Stay safe out there, and we hope everyone has a enjoyable evening. What do we got here? A 1.6 looks like on the globe. Again, that's the Southern California region. There is the 4.3 EMSC showing that on the globe on the in the Gulf of California region. And I'm just really disappointed that the USGS not reporting on that at all. But it's kind of why we run this combined data, EMSC data and the USGS model. So, all right, guys, enjoy your evening. Please like, thumbs up this video. Make sure you share it. YouTube algorithms have been kind of on the low side recently, and they've been kind of throttling this channel, and that's not a good thing. I kind of like to get the truth and the relevant information out here when it comes to terms of facts and data about earthquakes and solar weather. So make sure you guys thumbs up this video and share it. It does kick in the YouTube algorithms significantly, so make sure you guys do that while you're here, and we will chat you guys a little bit later. Stay safe, everyone. Peace out.